Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. And today we'll be talking about how video pricing is not about your rates. Let me actually get my Instagram live started. I forgot to start that one. So you can all just hang out with me while I go to Instagram and start the Instagram live for those who are not here. They should be here. This is where everyone should be. The YouTube is where all of the good stuff is at. All right, what a wide angle lens that is. Okay. Perfect. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. I'm live on YouTube and Instagram. So hopefully you guys have found me on one of these platforms. Today we're talking about how video pricing is not about hourly rates, and why thinking in terms of hourly rates keeps you stuck as a filmmaker. So this is, two other filmmakers talking about how to price yourselves, how to understand your value, your positioning, and how to make sure that what you are doing for your business is actually helpful for you. So that is what we're talking about today. I'm going to be going over some things. We'll be talking about hourly. We'll be talking about rates, how to figure out rates and what kind of goes into that. And we'll also, I'll be sharing my screen, going through some stuff. I've got a fake profit and loss statement I've put together for a pretend, freelance video business, making $100,000 a year. We'll kind of run through that and just kind of talk through some of these things. So just learning how to make money making videos, right? Like making videos is fun, but how do we make money doing it? So that's kind of what we're talking about today. And how to make sure that as you price yourself, you're pricing yourself appropriately to your skill level, to where you should be, making sure that you can make a living and do what you need to do doing this. So for those who have joined us on Instagram, we're also live on Facebook, where I'll be sharing YouTube. Facebook, what is that? We'll be live on YouTube as well, as I'll be sharing my screen and things over there. So hit the YouTube live if you want to get all the good stuff. Anyone who's here, feel free to say hey in the chat. I see we got some people in the stream. All right. I don't want to wait too long before we get this thing going. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. I just realized I want to pull up one other thing. I'll talk about my budget calculator today. So I'm going to pull that up. That would be this guy here. Okay, I'm going to make a copy of this. That way I don't mess with the one that I'm actually selling everybody. And then they get all like, why is this all screwed up? Anyway, so I'll be sharing the my video budget calculator as well once we get to that part of the segment. So to get this thing started, why does hourly filmmaking keep you stuck as a filmmaker? And I say filmmaker, really this can apply to any creative business. You can be a videographer, you can be a photographer, you can be a graphic designer. Like this whole thing applies to so many different industries. You don't have to just be a filmmaker, but that's who I'm talking to right now. So you have to remember that if you're working at an hourly rate, what you're doing is you're trading your time for money. That's fantastic if you are an employee somewhere, if you're getting a salary and you're like, hey, I work my 9 to 5 and then I go home, I get paid, and that's how this thing works. That's great. But if you are a freelancer, if you're in business for yourself, if you have a small business doing video or something, creative, then this is not a factory job, right? This is not a 9 to 5. And are you pricing what you do based on the amount of hours you put in, so your earning potential is limited to the hours you work, or are you pricing based on outcomes? And there's something called value-based pricing. That's not really what I'm diving into today. That is a whole other school of pricing. You can look up lots of stuff about that. Excuse me, I'll talk about it a little bit, but that's not my goal in this, so don't hear like, hey, he's going to talk about value-based pricing, because that is something actually different than what I'm talking about. But there you go. Also, next week, we'll be going live again, going live every week, usually Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Some weeks it might be, a Thursday or Tuesday, depending on what days we have shoots and things. So I'll keep you guys posted on which day it's going to be. By default, it's Wednesday at 11 a.m. unless something comes up. So next week, I have a surprise for you. I will have a guest on the show. So come next week for that. Let's see. Hey, we've got a whole bunch of people here on the Instagram. Hello, everybody. Mackenzie, everybody who's joined. Thank you, guys. Shout out to all of you for being here. So over on YouTube, where the good stuff is. Let's talk about the trap of hourly pricing. When you price hourly, you are limited to the amount of hours you can work. So your income is limited to the amount of hours. And there is only so much per hour that you can reasonably make, right? There's kind of this bell curve where, hey, if you're cheap, you can get lots of work. And if you're super expensive, you're not going to get very much work. And somewhere in the middle is this kind of like, whatever, perfect point where you can get a really good balance of the rate you're charging and then the amount of hours you work. And you can find this happy medium of like, okay, I'm working the amount of hours I like. I'm getting paid the amount per hour that I like. That's great. But what happens when you want to scale past that? Your only lever to pull in an hourly pricing system is to raise that price. That's the only lever that you have. What's up, Alberto? Good to see you on the YouTube. So you got to get past being able to pull that hourly price as your lever. So what do? There is value-based pricing, which, we'll talk about, or you can think about how do you charge for profit? How do you charge based on outcomes? So, and it might be similar to value-based pricing. There's some similarities to it, but it's not exactly the same. When you are working hourly, you're actually punished for being fast and efficient. So if you're someone like me who's been creating videos for over 20 years and like not in an arrogant way, but I'm good at it. I'm fast at it. And not to say I'm the best in the world. You look at our work, we do good work, and we're proud of our work. I look at other people and I go, wow, they're way better than us. So I don't mean in any way like we're the best. But when you are good, when you are fast, at an hourly rate system, you actually get punished for that. So there's this like lack of incentive to continue to do better. I mean, like I've had times where, you're on a job and you're like, I recognize that I'm not making very much money for what I'm doing here. And so there's this sense of like, maybe I shouldn't put forth 100% effort because the client is not paying top dollar. And you never want to put yourself in a position where you feel like I should give less than my all. And so again, when you're in this hourly pricing thing, that is something that can happen. So the other thing about hourly based pricing versus pricing on outcomes or pricing on value, which is what we'll be talking about, when you are doing this hourly based pricing, you're limited to how much per hour you can charge. And there is just simply a limit. There will always be outliers, right? And so we're not talking about outliers. We're not talking about this one guy that can charge $1 million per hour because he's just so freaking good at whatever it is. And millionaires and billionaires hire him and they will pay him $1 million an hour because 1 hour of his time is gold. Like, I'm not talking about those kind of outliers. I'm talking about your typical creative videographer, photographer, video production company, like the normal people, right? Like we're good at what we do it well, and clients hire us to do something for them. That's who I'm talking to. And so there is a limit to how much someone will pay you per hour. Just period. Whatever that number is, there is a limit. And once you hit that limit, you will find out. You'll know it. And so how can you get past that? Once you find that limit and no one will pay more than X amount per hour for your service, how do you continue to scale your business? How do you continue to grow your income? If you're only paid when you're working, then you're just only paid when you're working. And so that means your only option is to work more hours. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not trying to live the hustle culture of working 80 hours a week as my normal routine. And sure, there's projects and there's things that come up where, hey, for this week, we're going to bust our butt. I'm not against working hard. I'm against a culture of the way I run my business that means I have to neglect my family. I have to neglect all these other things in order to work hard, in order to make X dollars. That's not what I'm about. So, call it work-life balance, call it putting your family first, whatever you want to call it. I'm like, how can we make the money we need to make working a reasonable schedule regularly, right? Regularly. So let's talk about math. Let's talk about some of these things. I'm going to pull up a fake P&L that I put together. Basically, I just took our P&L and then erased all the numbers and put in, random numbers. So all the categories and accounts and stuff are there, which is helpful. I simplified some of it because, like we're an LLC, we have other things that we got to do. We have employees, and like most of you guys are not in that situation. So I kind of removed some of the extra complicated stuff out of it. But all of the bones of what you need in a P&L is there. So talking about that, and I'm kind of like just getting over like a cough cold thing. So hopefully I'm not too phlegmy today. Let's say you want to make $8,000 a month, right? Let's say your target is to do $100,000 a year. And so that's roughly $8,000 a month. Simple math, right? Not exactly. So let's say that's $2,000 a week that you need to earn. So as we're thinking through, how do we get there? It's what do we need to do? Because you can't bill 40 hours a week, right? This is not a salaried position. So, if you just go $8,000 a month, I'm trying to make $100K a year, $8,000 a month. That's roughly, let's see, I have it written down here. It's roughly $8,000 a month, $2,000 a week, $400 a day, $50 an hour. Now, if you're working a salaried job and you're making $52 an hour, then yeah, you'll make your 100K. But you're not working a salaried job. You're doing video production or photography or whatever creative business it is that you do. And so you will not work all of those hours. You're not getting paid 40 hours. Now, you might work that many hours in your business, but clients are not paying you 40 hours a week every single week. So we have to figure out, how do we get beyond charging $50 an hour, right? You should be charging more than that. So let's look at this P&L. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Now, I'm screen sharing on the YouTube. So if you guys want to see this and you're on Instagram, hop over to the YouTube at StoryKing Studios on YouTube is where we're running this stream. So here is our fake P&L for our freelancer business. So quick math at the top here. We've got your income. We've got, maybe you gave some discounts this year. You probably sold, some equipment. You bought more equipment than you sold, obviously. And then you did some video work. And for that video work, our total income for this is $100,000. Just quick, easy round numbers, right? So the way that works out, $100,000, I have a monthly average here. That would be $833 a month, just the annual divided by 12. And then if we divide that by 4 weeks, that gives us $2,083 that we need to make per week. And then divide by 5 days gives us $417 a day that we need to make as kind of our day rate. And then that brings us to $52 an hour for an 8-hour day. So if you're looking at that math going, okay, that is how we get to $100,000. Now, there is a lot of things that we have to account for as we think, man, I just made $100,000. So let's walk through it. Okay, so we've got our income of $100,000, and we said, hey, maybe we gave $3,000 in discounts, and then we sold $3,000 in equipment, so we're still at net $100,000. So now we come to cost of goods sold, merchant account fees. This is your credit card processing fees. If you are accepting payments on Square or Stripe or any sort of online thing where people are paying by credit card, which is pretty normal, you are going to pay these fees. And maybe some of your clients pay by check or cash or whatever. Let's say you have $2,000 a year in credit card fees. So we're looking in the annual column. So $2,000 a year in these fees. And then we've got $2,500 in contractors. So maybe on a couple projects, you had to bring in some help, give this guy $500, that guy $500, maybe you had someone help edit a project, and a couple times throughout the year, you got some help. Otherwise, this thing is all you. Like that's kind of what we're assuming. This is all you. So now we have our cost of goods sold, $4,500. Gross profit at this point, $95,500. Then Let's jump into the expenses, which is where all the real money is. Because what you have to think about is like, okay, I'm making $100,000, but that doesn't all go to me. I've got to pay, the cell phone bill and the internet bill and all of these things. So advertising and promotion. This can be running ads. This can be buying logoed shirts. This can be your website. This can be paying to run ads on social media. This can be any of these activities you do to get business, joining a networking group, whatever this thing is. $3,000 for the year. Business licenses and permits, $100 for the year. You've got to get some business license. You got to file some things. You've got, maybe $500 for the year in vehicle expenses. You got to, get some gas to go on a trip, things like that. Continuing education. You should definitely be budgeting for this. Whether that's buying a course, whether that's buying, some kind of a tool that helps you run your business, buying my budget spreadsheet calculator, buying, any of these things that you need, right? Whatever course, whatever online community, whatever coaching program that you're part of to continue to grow yourself and your business, that's this. So let's say $2,000 a year for that. Now maybe $6,000 a year for equipment. Now this is definitely assuming that you're a videographer because we spend obscene amounts of money on equipment, and frankly, $6,000 is not very much for the year. Franchise tax expense. Let's say this would count for like your sales tax, right? So like say you do something where you deliver physical items. If you sell, and I'm in California, in America, and so there are things that you got to factor in for that. So say you sell a physical product, you have to charge sales tax, and then you have to pay that sales tax then to the government agency, which in California is the Franchise Tax Board. So you're going to pay some out for sales tax that you collected. So right there, this $100,000, it's not all yours. 200 of that was already sales tax that you collected and then have to pay back to the government. So like, remember that when you see that big number, it's not yours. Insurance expense. Like you should be, if you have a business, you probably are paying a minimum of $1,000 a year in insurance, probably more. If you have employees, a lot more. Our number here is big because we have to maintain a large liability policy. We have workers' comp. We have all of these things because we're running an actual production company. Meals, this is something that you got to do. Because you'll have to pay for food while you're out on shoots, things like that. In America, you probably have heard like the tax write-offs for meals have gone away, so that's a little sad. But you're still gonna have the expense. You're just not gonna be able to write it off. Office supplies. This can be ink and paper for your printer. It can be water bottles. It can be whatever these things are. That you're gonna need throughout the year to keep your business running. Professional fees. This could be hiring a CPA, a bookkeeper. It could be any sort of thing that you're paying someone to do for your business. Not employees, but hiring an outside firm to do something. Repairs and maintenance. Usually this is pretty small for a lot of people, but sometimes, I broke a lens. That'll be $1,000. You have to think about these things. Subscriptions and software. Between Adobe, I think Adobe is this much all by itself. Between Adobe, all the AI things, music, licensing, all of these subscriptions that we get roped into doing what we do, you're going to have some money here for subscriptions. Travel expense. Maybe you had to go stay in a hotel somewhere, or you had to get a flight because you had to go somewhere on a project. Travel expenses. Utilities, right? As a business, you can write off certain things like maybe your internet or your cell phone bill, things that you use for business. So definitely think about what you can do as a write-off there. This is not tax advice, but there you go. Okay, so our total for expenses, $22,650. Our net operating income, $72,850. So $72,000. We started with $100. We've now spent well over $20 because we had $4,500 cost of goods and then we had $2,200 in expenses. So now we're at $72,850. So yay, we've made $72,000 out of our 100. This is exciting stuff, right? Like I can do something with this. Well, don't forget you got taxes. Uncle Sam wants his part of it. Maybe that's 15%. Depends on your tax bracket, depends on your deductions, yada, yada. Let's say it's 15%. That's a pretty typical number to plan for. So that'll be another $11,000. And now you're down to $61,000, almost $62,000. And let's say you're going to give yourself a nice, what we're going to call a happy salary of $60,000. And maybe that's not a happy salary for you, but this is realistic, right? This is realistic. So now what's left after your $60,000 salary? You have $1,900 of actual business profit that was not taken by you that you can now use to save, to put in a savings account, to be ready for a rainy day, to save up towards something that you're going to need, or just to be like, you know what, we're going to Disneyland. You might need more than that. But anyway, this is how this sort of thing works. And it takes quite a while to get through all of this money. And it sounds so good, like, man, I'm making $8,000 a month. Well, you're only keeping 5 of that in a month. And 3 of that is going out to all these other things. So, and you're left with like 160 a month that you're profiting. And I'm defining profit not here in the business sense. Like profit is, on your P&L like this here, your net income. That's going to be your profit when it comes time to like taxes. Your taxable income is the 72, etc. Like that's, but I'm saying once you've taken your share of the money, what's left is, what I would call the real profit. And that's going to be less than $2,000 out of $100K. So when you're working on an hourly basis, it's really easy to get trapped in this stuff because guess what? This $22,000 in expenses, this $4,500, what are these numbers together? Do some quick math. $27,000. Those $27,000 are going to be there no matter how much you make. Now, the more you make, the more they'll go up. But, if you make $100,000 and you have to pay 27, okay. If you only made $75,000 that year, you still got to pay the 27. So that difference in 25 comes out of your number. That comes out of your $60,000. So that's now 60 minus 25. That's definitely not as happy of a paycheck. But if you make an extra 50, guess what? That's going to come down to you, and that 60 now turns into 110. You'll have some additional expenses, additional taxes, etc. But the bulk of that's going to be yours, as long as you didn't make that money by spending a bunch of money hiring subcontractors or some other expense. So as you're looking at how to price yourself, you have to factor in all of these things. So I like to run these P&Ls and run budgets based on kind of what I anticipate my P&L is going to be, to give myself a sense of like, how much do we need to make in a month to cover all of these expenses? And so in this case, like we've pretty much used all this money. So we're bringing in $8,333 a month. 8,333, say that correctly. And our net income is 6,000. After taxes, we've got about 5,000. We're paying most of that 5,000 to ourselves. We've got $160 left. So for simple math, we'll just say $8,000. Now, with $8,000, we got to figure out how do we make that $8,000 in the time we're working. Now, if we're working all of our hours, that again turns into that $50 an hour number. But that's not the way that life works. You're not going to get clients to hire you for all 40 hours out of your week. And so that's a number that you have to figure out. How many hours in the week are you actually getting hired? And probably a good way to do that would be to look back at your calendar from the last 6 months, last 12 months, whatever it is, and just kind of figure out how many days did I actually get paid to work. There's like administrative days, obviously, like there's times that you're working that you're not getting paid by a client, but how many days were clients paying you? You will probably find that it's somewhere between 25% and 50% of your days, depending on, what you do and how you structure your business. And, if you're a straight freelancer and all you do is shoot and deliver raw footage, you might have a higher, percentage, versus if you're like a full service production company, you might have a lower percentage of days you're being paid by a client, to go out on a shoot or whatever. You can count your edit days if you're getting paid for editing, etc. But you kind of want to figure out how many days am I getting paid by a client? So maybe it's half of the time, right? Just for easy math. So if you need to make $50 an hour working 40 hours a week, but you're only getting paid half of those hours, then you need to double that rate to $100 an hour in order to make your $50 an hour you need to take home. So that's part of how you think about it. In terms of figuring out your minimum, what do you need to make? Now that we've figured out baseline survival and what you need to make, now what we need to figure out is how do we grow from there? You want to think about revenue. You want to think about the expenses, how much profit, how much you're going to make as the owner, and remember that you're a business. And your business needs to make money, not just you. That's why at the end of this list, there was some profit. There wasn't much, but there was some profit for the business because the business needs to make a profit. Businesses exist to make profit. So if your business isn't making profit, something's wrong. Okay, so as you're thinking like a business, you want to figure out how do we make profit? How do we increase profit? Now, if I flip back to this for a moment, let's just say we figured out how to increase our profits. And so now we're able to double our profits. Instead of charging $100 an hour, we were able to charge $200 an hour. So we now generated $200,000 as a solo freelancer. And I've seen people who do this. This is possible. That changes all of these numbers. But what doesn't really change is your expenses. Now, like your merchant account fees will probably double because you'll, take, more credit cards. You'll probably have to hire a few subcontractors. Maybe that number doubles because you need a little extra help. All the rest of these numbers pretty much are not going to double. I'm scrolling down these things. Most of these numbers don't go up. Your insurance will go up a little bit based on your income. So maybe they'll take another $500. You may have, travel expenses maybe go up. Maybe it's $1,500 in travel expenses. So some of those things will go up. But all that to say, what comes down at the bottom line? Your total expenses went from like $2,000 to like $24,000. Not massive. Now your net income goes from $70K to $167K. So you had very little increase in expenses with a massive increase in income. Your taxes will go up. So now that's going to be $25K instead of, $11K. Your remaining profit is going to be $142,000. So if you're able to increase your profit by increasing your prices and not drastically increasing your expenses, now you go to pay yourself your $60K, you've got $82K left over. Well, great. Let me give myself a bonus. And how about I pay myself $90K? And now the business profited $52K. Okay, now we've got some steam. Now we can do some things in this business. So that's what I'm trying to show you guys. By increasing the income, we can increase the profit. And that is the goal. Because if we increase the profit, but we also then had to spend, $50,000 in subcontractor fees to make this happen, we're like right back where we started. Now you got your $60K and, $60. That would be horrible. You made $60K and you got $43 left over because you had to spend a lot of money on your subcontractors, on your expenses. So that's something that you want to think about is your profit margins in all of this. Okay, stop sharing the P&L there on the YouTube stream. Okay, so what you need to figure out, where are you at in this pricing competition? Are you placing yourself as a low budget person? Are you just trying to beat or match your competitors' pricing? Are you placing yourself in kind of a mid-tier and saying, look, we're good at what we do, we're reliable, our work is quality, you can trust the experience with us? Or are you positioning yourself as like, look, we're going to deliver an outcome to you? When you do that, people will pay you more. Because as someone who goes to buy anything, right? Like think of something that you want to buy. Products are easy, right? I want to buy this product. Why do you want the product? Because the product solves a problem that you have. It fills a need that you have, whatever that may be. And you say, I'm willing to exchange this much money to solve this problem or to fill this need or want or desire, whatever word you want to use. The point is, it's valuable enough to me to part with this much money for whatever I'm getting in return. That's just economics. So value has to exceed price in order for a transaction to occur. I have to perceive that, this $100 bill is less valuable than, this cough drop that I want. Now, who would pay $100 for a cough drop? Somebody who has a lot of money and is dying of a coughing fit and needs one right now. Okay, now the value of this cough drop has exceeded the $100. In any typical scenario, that would never happen. So you have to figure out how to make the value exceed the price. So what is the value of, I will show up for 1 hour and film a video. Okay, that value is very much up for negotiation. Are you going to charge $100 an hour? Are you going to charge $200 an hour? Are you going to charge a flat rate of $100? I mean, I've heard crazy things. Clients, potential clients will call and be like, hey, we need this filmed. And I'm like, great, well, that'll be this much. And they're like, whoa. You're like, oh yeah, that'll be $1,000. And they're like, oh my gosh, the last guy did it for $60. And I'm like, well, then call him back and never let him go because I don't know what he's doing. Is he 12? So you have to, figure out that value ratio with people. When it comes to how to price yourself and understand your value, it's not just the hourly rate. It's what are you delivering? So if you are delivering a commodity, commodities will always be sold based on price. If I want a pound of sugar, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to say, look, there's 3 different bags of pure plain white cane sugar. I'm going to buy the cheapest one because why would I pay more? Now, as you look at these bags of sugar, you realize they start to differentiate. One of them is twice as much. That's nuts. Why is this twice as much? Oh, it's organic. Oh, if that matters to me, oh, well then, yeah, I'll pay twice as much for organic sugar. Well, this one is organic coconut sugar, and it's from the Himalayas. They don't have coconuts in the Himalayas, but yeah, whatever. Like this is from Fiji, and this is organic Fiji. What's the word? Responsibly harvested or something, like, all these things. And as we walk up this value ladder, to some people, they're like, oh, I will pay $5 for this ethically sourced, organic, hand smashed sugar. And everyone else is like, I'll take the 99-cent white cane sugar, great value brand, please. Like, so price and value, there's this thing there. If you're selling as a commodity, then you will be judged based on price. And it's just going to be, well, who's the cheapest? Great, pick them. Who cares? But if you're selling something that's not a commodity, because once you've become the, hand-grown, petted 3 times a day, organic, ethically harvested sugarcane, now you've differentiated yourself. And there's something different about you. Now, not everybody will buy, but your price accounts for that. Maybe a quarter of the people will choose that, and your price is 5 times higher. Guess what? You're making more money. So that is how you want to think through that. So price based on outcomes, right? The whole tease on this whole thing is why pricing is not about hourly rates. So as we circle back to that, hopefully as we've laid this whole groundwork, that kind of starts to make sense. If your pricing is just about hourly rates, I've heard the term wage slave. I'm not, I'm like, wow, that's harsh. But that is kind of a way to think about it. Like if all you're doing is hourly rates, you're just working for a price. And at the end of the day, we all work for a price. Like even people who do value-based pricing, at the end of the day, you're working for a price. Like I'm not trying to get overly philosophical with it. But when you are selling something and the way that you sell it is we're this much per hour, then it's all just about, well, how many hours do I need? And I just need 3 hours. And people, don't give you the same level of respect as when you say, I'm going to sell you this package, and it has all of these things in it that you need. This package solves X problem. Because now I'm not buying a certain number of hours. I'm buying a solution to a problem. And now at that point, it's just about, do I value this problem enough to pay that much for the solution? And when you start selling solutions to problems, then you can charge more because you've reframed the conversation. And even the same client who wanted to pay $100 an hour for a videographer is now like, well, you're going to give me X, Y, Z and solve these problems. That is worth the $5,000 that you just quoted me. I will pay $5,000 for those solutions. And that's something that you want to think about. Thanks for the love in the chat, everybody. So the solutions are what they're buying. So as you are pricing yourself, think about the solutions that you're selling, the outcomes. Now, I will say, as people in the video production space, many times it feels like our clients, our end clients, don't give us any kind of metrics or statistics. And we don't have a case study that we can build and say, my video 5x their business. Like, we just don't usually get that kind of data. And some people do, some people can. Like, we have some of that data, but your average client just isn't going to turn all that over to you. So you have to figure out, how can you explain your value without saying, buy a video and we will 5x your business. That would also be a guarantee, and you'd be in a lot of trouble if you didn't hit it. So you have to be careful how we price out, how we talk about outcomes and how we price for them. So the big question is, what is this worth to the client? Now, as we talk about the value of things and we talk about outcomes, now we come to the conversation of value-based pricing. I don't fully use value-based pricing. I like some of the principles to it, but I don't fully embrace value-based pricing. Maybe I will one day. Like, it's not that I think it's bad. It just hasn't made sense for me at this point. Essentially, value-based pricing, if you're not familiar with it, says what is the value to them, that's the price, essentially. We say, oh, well, you need to generate $100,000 in sales, and you need a certain ROI, and so it will cost you $20,000 to generate that $100,000 in sales. That's a 4 or 5x return, and that is worth that. So the price is $20,000. And it's like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, as long as I can help you generate $100,000 in sales. There it is. So the thing about value-based pricing that I don't care for is how value-based pricing basically says, I will charge different clients different amounts of money for the same work. Because when you charge, hey, more people in the chat, love it. Good to see you, Kendra. When you do value-based pricing, you are saying, for X amount of work, I will charge this client $5,000, this client $10,000, that client $20,000, this client $3,000, all for the same scope of work, because it's based on the value to the client. And to me, I'm like, that just feels a little sketchy, because you're doing the same thing and charging all these different rates. And I'm like, that's not really fair. Now, what happens when these clients talk to each other? And now client one goes, oh man, this video was great. It was totally worth $5,000. And he's like, $5,000? I paid 10. What? Oh, he what? They did that. And then they compare their buddies, and they compare invoices. They're like, what the heck? And so to me, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really just sit well with me. What does absolutely sit well is to charge $1,500 and $110 because of the scope of work. And it's not just strictly hourly based pricing. So let me go ahead and share my calculator, my quote calculator. Let's see here. Let me get to the actual calculator page. Okay, and boom, ba boom, ba boom. Just prepping this so I can share screen with you. Okay, back to OBS where I can share my screen. All right, I've done a whole video on the pricing calculator. It's on our YouTube channel. Let me zoom in so you can actually see that a little bit better. So in our pricing calculator, what I've done is I've taken all of the elements that go into hourly based rate calculations, and then I've added some elements for value. And then you come in here and you just put in the numbers. You say, okay, we've got a job. It's going to take 2 of us, a full day to do pre-production. We're going to take a crew of 2 of us a full day to shoot this project. And we're going to use, the main corporate lighting kit. And there's no travel. This is a local job. And then we know this is going to take us, probably 3 days to put this project together. And, they're going to get 2 rounds of revisions. We'll need a minute's worth of voiceover on this, and they're not getting the raw footage. They are going to get a rush fee on this, and we are producing this project, so we're going to charge them a producing fee. And the total price for this is $14,000. And as fast as that, I'm able to come up with a quote. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes in this calculator that I had hid right before I brung it up. And that is how we get all of these numbers to work. So real fast, I'll just kind of reveal that here on the stream. So we have all the internal items, all the internal costs as we're going along here. So you can see, okay, this is going to cost this much, this costs this much. These are all the rates for these things. And boom, our cost for this is $3,700. That is my cost. Now, I'm sorry, $3,700 for post-production. The total cost for this is $5,800. I'm like, that math doesn't make sense. $5,800 is the cost for this particular project. And this is a theoretical quote calculator. So these are not all real numbers necessarily, but this is just kind of to give you some fodder, informational fodder. So this thing is going to cost us, our company, $5,800 to produce this video. And then we are going to mark it up by a certain percentage, 2.5x, is a common number. And so that would bring us to $14,600 on this project. And so that's how we can account for all of our costs. And you'll see there's a section in here where I had like raw footage and producing fees and rush fees. And there's a section in here where we've got, we've got the overhead percentage. We've got your credit card fees. We've got your commissions. We've got your overhead and just wiggle room on the project, because guess what? You're going to make a mistake. Something's going to get screwed up and it's not going to go according to plan. And you can either be like, well, client, I need to charge you an extra $500 to make this change. Or you can be like, great, we can handle that. And they're like, wow, what a great experience. And yeah, you took care of charging for all those things. And that comes out to your number, your 14.6 or whatever it's going to be. So I have a whole video on this pricing calculator. My point is not to sell you the calculator, but I'd be happy to sell it to you if you want it. But all of that to say, when you go to build your pricing, it's not just the hourly rates, but it's the other things that go into that. It's your overhead. It's percentages that you need to charge for other things that are not strictly related to an hour of work, like a credit card fee or all these things. But you don't want to break all these things out in some crazy line item quote for a client. They're just like, what are all these fees? What is going on here? So you got to keep it simple for clients. You don't want to make it really complicated. And so when we do a quote, this is how we do it. And it's pre-production, production, post-production. And I don't mind them seeing that, yeah, we're going to spend $2,000 of value in pre-production and planning and putting this thing together. Guess what? That separates us from the videographer who's going to show up and hit record. It's going to be $3,500 for the production because, we've got a crew of 2 people coming out. We've got a good kit. We've got all these things. great. That's a reasonable rate for what's going to happen that day. And if they're like, you know what, I don't think we need a full day. Well, we can talk about that, and maybe that's the case. Great. We can go down to a half day. And you're right. We only need a half day based on the logistics. So we'll just change that to a half day. And that's only going to be $2,075 for the day. And that brings our total price down to $12,700. Like, it's just really simple to do these sorts of calculations. And the numbers are solid because you've gone and calculated them. Okay, back off of the screen share. So talking about the pricing calculator, but the point of that, however you manage this, there's elements outside of hourly rates that you need to think of. Whether you go to full value-based pricing or not, or take just some elements of that, which is what I have done, you do want to think about what it's worth to a client. And there's certain things in here, for example, like the producing fee. That's really just a way to raise the price based on me knowing there will be some additional work for this project outside of what we might do just for production. So you have something like a producing fee, and you notice there was a number there. Like, I'll go back on the screen share real quick. You'll notice that on producing fee, there was a number. It's a 1. I can put a 2. I can put a 5. And I can explain that to a client any way I need to justify what that is doing and what that's for. So as I'm going into a project, if I'm like, I can tell this project is going to be super simple, smooth sailing, I don't have to charge a producing fee. Or I can be like, well, normally we have this producing fee of, $1,000, but I'm going to waive that for you because this seems pretty simple. You can spin it like that just to make them, feel good. Or you can be like, well, yeah, since we're going to have to do the producing, it's definitely going to be like 3 days worth of producing on this. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3 days for producing in here. And that raises the price back up. However, you need to adjust this price to make it work for you based on what you understand that the project is going to be, both in terms of scope and in terms of value to the client. So there is an element of value-based pricing in this. Because if you perceive, for this client, they're a Fortune 500 company, and if I give them a quote for $5,000, they will ignore me and not hire me. But I also can't justify saying, well, we need 8 days with a crew of 4, and I need to hire all, because I don't need it for this particular project. But I have to figure out, how do I make this project the correct value for this client? Because it's true that if you give a too small of a quote to too large of a client, they will just be like, oh, well, you clearly don't know what you're doing. You're not for us. So like there is that factor. Or if, on the other hand, you're working with a small local business and you want to discount for them because you're like, I like what you're doing and I like your project. Well, then the good news about that is you've got your costs right here. And so you're like, cool. Well, this is an $11,000 project. It cost me $47,000. So I know it cost me $47,000. So I can then offer them any discounted price between $47,000 and $11,700 and know my costs are covered. I mean, I can give it to them for $4,700 if I want. Like, hey, you know what? I'll do this for you guys for cost. We charge, $12,000 for this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it for you guys for $5,000. And they're like, wow, thank you. It's the way you frame it. So take that back off. Okay. That is a lot of information. Hopefully that is helpful. I can see I've got some questions in the chat here. So what's up? Hey, what's up, Corey? Thanks for watching. So if I owned a bakery locally and needed a commercial for a 30-second spot, and Google hit you up for the same 30-second spot with the same scope of work, for instance, would you charge the same amount? So that's a fantastic question. So that's where you would go, oh, Google, big business, I can charge them more. Actually, no. Usually when Google is going to send somebody out like that, they're looking for like a $300 job. So versus if you go directly to the client, because here's the thing, Google's functioning as an agency in that particular position. And so the client's paying Google more than $300. But the Google only wants to pay you $300 or whatever the number is. We've done projects like that in the past a while ago, and it's usually like, oh, you can tell the client's paying them $1,500 and they're going to call you and say, hey, can you do this for $300? Because they want to make a lot of profit. Because guess what? They're a business and they're smart. So the answer is no, you don't charge the same for those things. However, if, for example, Google calls us and says, hey, we want you to do a commercial for $300. I will hit them back and be like, hey, thanks. We charge $1,500 for that. Do you guys have any wiggle room? Like, I'm not going to say yes to a lowball thing, on something like that, unless I have a good reason to say yes to it. For example, Disney calls and they go, hey, we need you to do this thing. And this Disney is a classic. I can use Disney because they do this to people all the time. They lowball it because they know everybody wants to work for Disney once. So they can put Disney's logo on their website and say, one of my clients was Disney. And so they know they can get one super cheap thing out of anybody because people just want to work with them and get their logo on the website. And so there's big companies who do things like that. And you would think, oh, Disney, like they've got deep pockets. Yeah, but that money's not going to you as a videographer. So to answer Corey's question, that, you wouldn't necessarily charge the same. Also, because Google would be functioning as an agency in that situation, Google would be doing they'd be doing all the pre-production work. So let's just make a fake little quote here. I'm going to go ahead and pull the calculator back up, and let's just play the game. We'll play the game with Corey. Google calls and they say, hey, we need you to come out for 1 hour and shoot this simple little thing, and then just edit a quick 30-second thing and send it over to us. I know what Google's asking for at this point. Google wants a crew of one for 1 hour. They're going to provide me with their little 3 questions you need to ask them, and they're going to provide me with the whole pre-production. They've set up the shoot. I don't have to do anything other than show up with a camera. So there's no pre-production in this. It's going to be, a crew of one for 1 hour. It's going to be a videographer, gear kit. There's no travel because it's local. $350 to shoot this thing. Very cheap. And now in editing, I know they want a super quick templatized edit. I know they're not going to want to pay me for more than about 2 hours of editing. So there we go. There's no voiceover. There's no revisions. There's none of these other things. Okay, there we go. There's no rush fee. There's none of this stuff. So now, great, $875 because I know what the client wants. Now, up to me if I want to take a job that small or not. But there you go. Now, if I call the bakery, the bakery calls me direct. Now they're like, hey, we want to do that. Okay, do you guys know what you want? Oh, wait, I have no idea what we want. Do you know what you need? No. Do you have a script? No. Okay, great. Now, one of me is going to spend half a day doing pre-production for your thing. And now I know, because we don't have a plan, because this is not organized, because we're going to do a whole different thing, it's going to be a minimum of 2 hours. Minimum of 2 hours. Really, it's going to be a half day. It's like, look, we're going to need a half day. We're going to shoot all these things. We're going to make it nice. We're going to do the, we're going to light the interview, and we're going to make sure that the B-roll looks good. Yeah. Oh, great, cool. It's going to take me at least half a day to put this 30-second spot together because we've had to do this stuff. We do the storyboards, we make the plan, yada, yada, yada. And now it's a $3,200 job because the scope of work is clearly different because you're working with an end client instead of with an agency. So that kind of is part of the answer to that. Okay, Corey popped back in. In my hypothetical, I said, what if the scope of work was the same? Well, technically, if the scope of work is the same, then the price would be the same. If the scope of work is the same, the price would be the same. Like I'm not going to charge 2 different clients, 2 different prices on the same scope of work. My thing on this is the scope of work would change. Because you're working with an agency versus working with a direct client. So the scope of work inherently will change. But if the scope of work didn't change and the bakery said, oh yeah, we got it all figured out. We know what we need. We're just going to need 1 hour. Like it would just go right back to the same thing. I might, for a client like that, be like, yeah, you say it's going to be 1 hour, but I know it's going to be 2. So I'm going to charge you a 2 hour minimum. I might raise it a little bit because I understand how this is going to go better than they do. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we can make this edit happen in 2 hours. That's great. So now maybe we're going to charge $1,250 because we're going to spend a little more time on set because I just know that's what's going to happen because I know there is no agency. There is nobody holding your hand. It's going to be me, and I'm going to have to hold your hand and make this thing happen. So I will charge you a little more because I know that that's going to be what happens. But if the scope of work is the same, then yeah. Yeah, hope that answers your question, Corey. Awesome. Awesome. So that that is pretty much everything I had prepared to go through. So great spot for any questions, thoughts in the chat from anybody. Yeah, big thing is you want to price your video production so that you are selling the outcome, not selling just a certain number of hours of service. Because like if that was really it, it would be like, cool, here's my hourly rate. How many hours do you need me for? And then they're just like, come for 3 hours and film and then spend 6 hours editing. It's like, but you know what the editing takes. They don't know what the editing takes. If they're like, you can have 6 hours to edit this. Like, well, we could do it that way. And I could just be like, cool, I'll bill you for 6 hours of editing. And whatever is on the timeline, once the clock strikes 6, I just go, export, here you go. Like, you can do it that way. Like, horrible. Like, who's going to have a happy client if you do it that way? You definitely need to sell them an outcome. Like, I will make you a video, and here's how much that will cost. But you have to be able to, know what goes into it on your end, to make the video and all that good stuff. Okay, something else in the chat here. Mike's popping in. Corey, are you thinking about value-based pricing? Yeah, so we had talked about value-based pricing a little bit earlier, and that's just the idea that you price based on the value to the client rather than on, the hours that go into the service. And it's they're kind of usually positioned as like opposites. Like you can price on hours or you can price on value. And I kind of see this thing in the middle where it's like you price on the hours with profit and markup and, additional factors that go into the scope of work, and you consider the value, but it's not pure value-based pricing. Okay, so what's up in the chat here? I think this is where value-based pricing comes into play. A national commercial for Google that they will be using for a year. This should be factored into your quote. I really just need an hour, realtor. I really just need an hour of filming. LOL, Alberto, totally. So then, Corey, just to because we're just going back and forth in the chat now. Just to go back on that, if you're talking a national commercial that Google is going to use for a year, a commercial for Google, that's different. A commercial for Google, rather than, just someone doing a local ad on Google and Google has said like, hey, can you film the local ad for their, for their business Google ad? That is something totally different. You're talking about, the word just escaped me. Licensing and usages. Wow, there's a word for this. Can't think of it. But yeah, you're talking about if you've got if you're creating content for a client and they're going to use that content in a broad way. Yes, there is. There's an industry word for this that my brain is just not finding. I'm just going to say usages and licensing. That's close enough to the correct term, whatever that term is. If anyone remembers that term, just pop it in the chat. But there's a word for that. And so if you are creating content that's going to go to be used in a certain way, like for example, you take a picture for someone, but then they're like, well, but we want to put this in a magazine. There is a usage charge for that, right? Because it's not just, and this is where copyrights and all these things come into play. You have to be considering how things will be used. Now, if you're just talking about local businesses, like this just doesn't come into play. If you're just talking local businesses, in a small town, like none of this stuff really comes into play. No one even knows what this stuff is. But if you're talking about, large corporations, national, companies who are going to run a national ad campaign, there is absolutely a factor for that. If you hire actors for a project, there is and I'm blanking on the word still. There's an agreement you sign with these actors. You're talking professional actors. They will have an agreement where they say, great, you can use my likeness for 1 year. And that's included in the price. And my rate is, $600 for the day. And you get 1 year of usage. And if you go, hey, we want perpetual rights to use your face. Oh, that's a lot more. And now it's, $2,000 a day, or whatever the agreement's going to be. So yes, the usage rights, maybe usage is the word I'm looking for. The usage rights, for how they can use it and what media they can use it in and how long they can use it. Yes, that totally factors into price. Royalties. Yeah, thank you, Mike. That's another one. Okay. Yeah, I'm still just laughing. Alberto. Realtor, I just need an hour of filming. Yeah, totally. That is, yeah. And I'm like, yes. And that will be this much. For an hour? Yes, for an hour. You can call somebody else. Is this a luxury listing? Yeah, call somebody else. Anyway, so I hope that's helpful. Just kind of trying to set the stage around pricing and value, and how do you understand your costs and your profits and profit margins, because you want to know what your true costs are, and then you want to know how much you're going to mark those costs up to a client. And sometimes the markup, will shift a little bit, or sometimes you have, like the thumbnail that I had for this video of us doing a job for the Hard Rock Casino. Hard Rock Casino, global brand. And we did a huge project for them. We had about roughly a week of filming grand opening events. They were opening a casino in our area, and we got the contract through a friend, through a marketing agency, networking for the win, that we got to do a very large project, a large contract. We needed a lot of team members. There was a lot that went into this thing. And the price was set accordingly. We were not charging them $800 to come out for a day. Everything was a rush turnaround. They needed it same day within hours, or they needed it next day. Everything was, we needed, a crew of 2, 3, 4, 5 people. We're making same day highlight edits, multiple. I think we made 5 same day highlight edits. There was a lot, we had to deliver clips to go out to the news, media every day, within 2 hours of shooting. There was a lot that went into this project, and it was priced accordingly. It was a big project. It was high stress. It was very fast, and there was a lot of moving parts. And everything was on a rush fee. Everything was, to the max. And you would expect that for a brand like this. It was a high performance job. So that is factored into the price. And, the venue's, like a half-hour drive, that we're making this drive over and over and over and over and over with multiple people. So it's then you have to factor in some travel costs. You can factor in, meal costs, whatever, all these things that go into a job like this. And so it's priced accordingly. They are going to pay a premium because they're looking for a premium level of service. And it's not that we're value-based pricing. It's not that we're charging them more because, they're the Hard Rock Casino, they can pay more. That's not how we do our pricing. It's the scope of work and the intensity of the work and the speed of the work has increased, and that's what sets the price. And that's kind of why I had used that image in the thumbnail for this video, because it's it's not about rates. It's not about hours. Because in terms of the amount of hours that we worked, we made more per hour at that job than we would on, another job that was simpler. But it was all connected to not the value, as in we charged them more per hour because of value, but it was connected to what they needed to happen. And because everything was on overtime, everything was on double time, everything was on super fast turnarounds, everything was high stress. It was, pick up the phone and call me because I need this right now. And great, let me stop everything else I'm doing in my office and stop and slam together this really fast turnaround edit that you need at the last second. Things like that. Those are the things. Producing fee, right? We talked about producing fee on the calculator. This is where you bring in those producing fees because you're I know that there will be so many things that happen that are, quote, out of scope, but I'm not going to just bill you extra for every little thing that you do. Obviously some things are that's out of scope. We're billing you extra for that. And they're happy to pay the extra when those things came up because they knew They knew it was out of scope and they knew they needed it. And they're like, yes, we'll need it. We need it and we'll pay for it. And so they're a fantastic client in that sense. Demanding in the sense of we need these things and we need them now and we need them this way. But that's just working high performance level. Like all high performance work is demanding. It's not the client was demanding in a bad way. It's just like, look, it's a high performance client. They need a high performance treatment and we have to do a high performance job for them. Like that's standard operating procedure. And so there's a price that goes along with that. Whereas, the local, like relaxed business owner who's just like, yeah, come in, for an hour and make me this thing. I'm like, this is a low stress, simple project. I don't have to charge the premiums. Again, it's not premiums because you're a big client. It's premiums because you need big service. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, what was going off in the chat here? I saw this moving in my background. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Royalties. Yeah. Zero prep. Yeah. Good stuff. Cool. Okay. We've come up on an hour for the stream. I hope this has been helpful and valuable to you guys. We do have the pricing calculator available for sale. I've got a whole YouTube video about it. You can check that out. If you're interested, the link will be in the description for that. I'll add it to the link in the description for this, as part of, the stream. Once I close the stream out, I'll add that in. Let's see. Next week, we have a guest. I will have a guest on the show. And it'll be a surprise. So you get to come back and see who it is. To close this thing out, if you feel like you're stuck, and you're stuck at $50 an hour, or you're stuck at $100 an hour, or $200 an hour, whatever that number is that you feel stuck at, consider what other elements need to go into your pricing beyond just that hourly rate. Think about all these things that we talked about. Think about the things that I went over there on that budget calculator, and figure out, how can I stop only charging for my hours, and how can I charge for the other elements of the project? How can I account for, at some degree, the value of the project to the client? Again, I'm not into straight value-based pricing where I charge 3 completely different rates to 3 different clients for the same scope of work. Now, just to circle back on, that point that Corey had made about scope of work, if it's a national commercial, well, that use case is part of the scope of work, right? Like if you're licensing your footage perpetually to a client who's going to use them globally, perpetually, like the value of that scope of work is higher because you're giving them a license in addition to giving them, the content. That they are, and it makes sense, right? Because they are going to use this money, these images, video, whatever you create, to make money for the next 10 years, and it's going to make them millions of dollars. So for you to be like, great, I have a $5,000 licensing fee for you to do that, is like, yeah, totally makes sense. And that is standard practice when you're at that level. Now if you're coming in as a gaffer on a national commercial, like you're not charging, like as a gaffer, you're working on a day rate. As the production company or the agency, like you're the one who's getting those bigger numbers. So that's kind of the whole thing to this is, it's also the difference between like, I'm just a freelancer, I'm just coming in working an hourly rate, versus I am the production company or I am the agency, and I am actually putting this project together end to end, instead of just like, oh, I'm just a vendor coming in for an hour with a camera and filming something, because those are 2 different price points. The agency, the production company will always make more than just a freelance videographer. Like if you're coming out to a project and you're just a solo videographer, one guy, with a gimbal, so to speak, you can only charge so much for that. But when you're an agency, when you're a production company, when you are providing an end-to-end solution to a problem, you can charge a lot more, even for, quote, the same work. But it's not really the same work because you're providing a strategy level to the project. You're providing, a different level of customer service and customer experience. Like there are things that change, and that's what affects that price. Okay. what else came up in the chat here? In jobs where bidding is required, value-based pricing may get you out of bid. 100%. If they're coming to you for a quote, that's different, especially if they pursued you because they want you to film it. Yeah, good point, Mike. If you are like responding to like RFPs, requests for proposal, which is, hey, and usually that means it's a government or a very large, corporation. And they're like, hey, our process is we have to send this out to bid to 3 different companies and, or more. And so so give us a bid, for this project. Those are usually going to be bigger projects, $50K plus, whatever it's going to be. And if you're trying to value-based price people in that, like Mike said, you will absolutely lose. Because at that point, it's a bidding game. And usually when there's an RFP, they have to choose the lowest bid. Or at least the lowest bid within reason. Like if someone comes in and they clearly are just like a lowball who don't know what they're doing, like they're not obligated to pick a bad choice. But usually there's very little discretionary room they have in a situation like that. If you're talking about like an official RFP bid process. Whereas if you're working direct to a client, they may be getting 3 different bids, but they can choose. And so you have full freedom to price yourself how you want and to explain your price and position yourself how you want. So, and positioning is something we didn't really talk about here, but I kind of talked more about that last week. Positioning and the market you're in and how you put yourself out to your clients has a big factor on the price you're able to charge. So that's definitely something that you want to think about. Okay. I appreciate everyone who stuck in. We went over the hour for the stream today. So tune back in next week for our next stream with a guest. And we will have a great time there again. So thanks everyone who joined us on Instagram, on YouTube, and everywhere else that you might have seen this thing. Thanks everyone for being here. And we will see you guys next week, Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, when we go live pretty much every week, unless there's a shoot. This week, we were busy teaching some video production classes to some high school students yesterday, and so could not go live at our normal time, so I moved it to today. That was a lot of fun. We'll have some stuff on YouTube coming out about that. Anyway, thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate you joining in on the stream. Every Wednesday at 11 a.m. usually. And we will see you guys on the next one. Goodbye.